All right, guys, let me toggle over here. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. All right, so everybody should have an ASVAB score sheet that looks like this. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to understand this score sheet. I'm going to explain to you kind of why we took this and the significance of it. And then I'm going to introduce you to a website, a companion website to this score sheet that you can use to complete something called an interest inventory called the Afqt, or the FYI interest inventory. And then I'm going to show you how to access another website called Afqt where you can search for careers. And if you have questions, you can try to chat those to me, or we can try to get together later on. Well, let's start first with this score sheet, which remember I sent everyone a copy in their school email, so you can pull it up from there. So here's how you read this score sheet. So first of all, remember we took the school-based version, the ASVAB-CEP, which stands for ASVAB Career Exploration Program, which is different, slightly different from the ASVAB test you would take in the recruiter's office. The point being, there is no obligation whatsoever for any military service. We give this test because there's some really good resources that you'll find out here in a minute that come along with this test. This test is a really good chance for you to take a look at what you're good at, and then we're going to try later to match that with what you're interested in. And the hope is to find a job that you have some skill in as well as some interest. That's really the key to finding a good career. So let's jump in real quick. So there's some important scores we're going to go over. We're going to talk about what the Afqt means. We're going to talk about these career exploration scores, and then these sub scores, as well as the stuff here in the middle. So let's start first with this right here. It says percentile scores. So it's important to understand right off the bat, this is not a pass or fail type of test. It's not out of 100. You're given a score as a percentile score, which is different than a percent. A percentile score compares you to other students similar to you. So you'll see there's a column for other 10th, or in this example, it's 10th grade students. Yours will say 11th grade. But students in your grade that are your same gender, you're compared to students of a different gender, and then all students. So you can kind of see your relative strengths to other students similar to yourself. And there's a reason for that. The reason we compare you to your same gender and the opposite gender, because of how we experience the world differently as men and women, we have access to different experiences. So for instance, I'm gonna be a little stereotypical here, but boys tend to have maybe a little more experience with mechanical issues. And so they're gonna naturally have a little more familiarity with like auto shop. They might do better in the auto shop information area. Doesn't mean they necessarily have more ability than a woman, but typically a girl doesn't have that experiences. And so this test has been highly researched, and that's taken into account when your scores are reported. It's important to understand where you relate to other students. So you have percentile scores that are anywhere from 1 to 99. You can't get any higher than the 99th percentile. That means you're in the highest 1% of students who took the test in that particular category. So you have percentile scores. Now your career exploration scores, your verbal score, math, and science and technical, these are kind of your main scores, and these are made up of a combination of these sub-scores. So the two most important scores to take advantage for you to take notice of are your verbal and math scores. Your verbal score up here, your career exploration score, is made up of a combination of your word knowledge and paragraph comprehension sub-scores. Your math skills career exploration score is made up of a combination of your arithmetic, reasoning, and math knowledge. And so those sub-scores get, sub-test scores get averaged together, and that's how you get your verbal and math scores. Science and technical is a combination of the science and technical sub-test down here. And then your Afqt, which stands for Armed Forces Qualifying Test Score, is a combination of your verbal and math together. So notice what I said, your Afqt does not take into account your science and technical, but just verbal and math. So here's why that is. Your Afqt is the entrance score. If you wanted to enter any branch of the military, you would have to have a 31 or higher to qualify to enlist in a branch of the military. Based on the different branches, some of their AFQT scores are higher. For instance, Navy and the US Air Force tend to require, but the careers that they have available tend to be more higher technology. And so their AFQT scores are higher because they, any student or any individual that enlists in the US military, you will go through basic training and then you'll pick a career and you'll go to school. And you'll, what's called your MOS, and you go to a training school. Well, those careers that are require more technical skill are longer. So I like to give the example. I have a good friend in high school, wasn't very athletic, didn't know what he wanted to do, went to college, got the end of 4 years, had student loan debt, decided, man, I need to look at options, decided to go in the military, but he was really smart. And so he scored high, and particularly in the verbal skills, that they sent him to language school. Well, his language school is a year long, which is considerably longer than most MOSs. You'll see people that might have 6 weeks of training. Well, he had a year because he actually learned a language and actually ended up learning 2 different languages. Again, his AFQT score got him in, and then the higher AFQT qualified him for some more specific technical careers, and then that allowed him to do his training, which is more intense. So we've got our career exploration scores, our subtest scores here, which in a minute we'll see how that applies to us, and then our AFQT. Now, another thing to mention about the AFQT and how this affects you is with the new graduation pathway requirement, in place of I-STEP, students can need to demonstrate some kind of employability skill, which is normally an extracurricular activity, a career technical program like our vocational school, or it could be a job. And then the other category is post-secondary readiness. And a 31 or higher on the ASVAB would satisfy that requirement for post-secondary readiness. So students who earned a 31 or higher on this test, they've already got that marked off their list for completing a graduation pathway, which is another reason why we give it. Okay, now just another thing to remember as you're looking at your scores is these are a snapshot in time. So on the day you took it in January 29th, this was how you did. Your scores can improve. And most certainly as you learn more information over time, if you were to retake the test, you would certainly do better. And from my experience, I've worked with other students who have taken the ASVAB, not done as well as they wanted. They've either done some test prep or learned some more material in school, and most certainly I've seen them increase their scores. So this is just a snapshot in time. Now, if you notice over here in the center part, we call these your score bands. Now notice it's not from 0 to 100. And notice also you've got your little X there, you've got a gray area around it. So I mentioned to you when you take this test, this is a snapshot in time. And so what this score band shows you is that if you would have had retaken the test right away, you'd most likely score somewhere within that band, but you could score higher or lower based on just how you're feeling that day. And so there is some variability in these scores. This score band, the best way to read this is look at the center here. Consider this kind of average. And what you're simply looking for is, do your scores cluster above or below average? And that's really what this part of the screen shows you. So the point of this test is to look at the areas where you have strengths and weaknesses. And we'll see in a minute as we start looking through careers, we want to pick a career that caters to our strengths. So if we're not great in math, that's fine. Let's not pick a career that requires a lot of math skill. It's okay, not everybody is strong in everything. The key is to find something you're good at and to find a career that corresponds with that. Now, the other thing we need real quick before we move on is if you look at your score sheet down to the right-hand corner, is this area right here, your access code. So here in a minute, I'm going to show you how to get on the ASVAB program website. And you will need to enter this access code, and then what it'll do, it'll allow you to create an account. And then by entering that access code, then these scores that you have on your score sheet will automatically show up in the system. And there's some cool features online that exceed what we can do on paper here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to toggle over to the website and re-share my screen. So let's go ahead. If you can get on your laptop, that would be great. You might be able to access from your phone as well. But I want everybody to go to asvabprogram.com, and this is where we're going to spend the majority of our time. This is a great website. You have access to this with your online access code for 18 months. So July of 2022 is when this access code that you have on your ASVAB score sheet expires. And so you can utilize all the tools on this website up through that time. So if you click on create account, it'll ask you for your access code and then your email. You can use your school or your personal email, it doesn't matter. And then you'll create a password to make sure you remember it. And then once you do that, it'll register you. And when you log in, I'll log in as me. When you log in, you will have your ASVAB scores waiting for you. Now, since I'm not taking the test, I would click on see my scores. I've got just a sample story. So if you were to click on that, you would see your actual scores from your score sheet. Now, once you log in, and you click on see my scores, there are a couple things that are really helpful that I want to point out. So when you look at your scores under here, under your strengths, you're going to see these little books. They look like little books stacked on top of each other, and that's a graphic way of representing strengths. So if you scored really high in verbal, for instance, you're going to see maybe 2 or 3 books for verbal. Maybe you didn't score so well in science and technical. You might have 1 book. Now that's going to correlate when we look at other careers. There are going to be careers that are going to be organized with more books. So if you're strong in math, you look for those careers that have multiple books under the math area. If you're not so good at math, then you want to find those careers that only have maybe 1 book marked for math. Likewise, your subtests that we talked about before, those will be color-coded for you on this website. And they'll match your skill set for each career exploration score. Now, since we just talked about scores, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through this because we just explained how to see it on your score sheet. It's essentially the same with a few extra features. Now, what I would like to do now is I want you to scroll down here under number 1, Learn, and we're going to click on Take the FYI. And what you're going to do is you're going to take an interest inventory. So when you take your interest inventory, it's going to give you a score, and I'm going to show you how to interpret that score. Once we have that score, we're going to match it up with our score strengths over here, and we're going to find some careers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes to take this survey. And what I would like you to do is when you're done, message me so I know you're done. When most people are done, we'll move on, but I want to give you some time to do that. So go ahead, and if you don't remember how we got there, you will click on number 1, Learn, Take the FYI, find your interests, and then you'll click on Let's Get Started, and then you'll start answering questions. And what you're simply going to do is mark if you like something, if you're indifferent to it or dislike it, based purely on your interest. It is not based on what you think you're good at. So if you've never tried something, you don't have to have experience with it. It purely has to be, what am I interested in? So go ahead and do that, okay? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second, and I'll be right back. Remember to message me when you finish up. All right, I see a couple people are done. Okay, wait here a few more minutes. Remember, don't think too hard on these questions. It really is about just your first impressions. It is possible to overthink these. All right. I know some of you are finishing up. Message me if you don't mind if you're still working, just so I know you're still working. I don't want to hurry anyone too much along, but I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So message me if you need a few more minutes. I'll be happy to oblige. All right, okay. So I have shared on my screen this pretty graphic here. And I'm gonna get a little geeky on you here, a little counseling theory that you didn't ask for. There's a guy named John Holland who was a high school counselor, guidance counselor years ago, years and years ago. And he did research on careers and trying to match students like yourselves with the right careers so they would be successful. And what he did was he developed a model called RIASEC, and that stands for, that's an acronym for the word you see in front of you, or sometimes it's called the John Holland Code. So the FYI interest inventory that you just took is based on this research. So what you do when you get done with your taking the FYI, it will give you 3 letters. You get one of these 3 letters, and I'll explain to you what they are here. So moving kind of from the top around clockwise, they're basically, you can think of this like if you take all the jobs that are in the world, you can kind of divide them into 6 categories, and you can take all workers essentially and divide them into 6 categories. And the idea is if you can match the type of worker up with the right career, they're going to be happy. So investigative careers and investigative people, these are people who like to learn to solve problems. So investigative careers are careers where you solve problems like engineers or scientists. Moving to the right are artistic people. Artistic people, this is pretty self-explanatory. They like to innovate. They use their intuition. They like to work in unstructured situations and be creative. And so they're going to want to be in careers that are like that. Graphic design, believe it or not, even things like cosmetology would fall under that because you're being very creative. Social people are like people like myself. I like to work with people. As crazy as it might sound, I like people. I enjoy being around them. And I like helping them with their problems. So social jobs like counselors and social workers and other areas like that, teachers would fall under this category. Enterprising people, we get to the bottom of our model here, are people who like to influence, persuade. Honestly, they like to be in charge. So these are your small business owners. These are your CEOs. These are your politicians. And so you want to, if that's the type of person you are, you want to find a career that allows you to do that. Conventional people like to work with data and numbers. They like predictability in situations where there's no ambiguity. They like to know what to expect every day. These are your accountants, sometimes your elementary teachers. They like to have a structured environment. And then finally, realistic are people who like to work with their hands. Now, what is interesting about realistic people, a lot of athletes are realistic. They're good with their bodies. They're comfortable with that. And so they want to be in careers that are realistic. So police officers, nurses, physical therapists, these are all people that use their bodies. They're hands-on. They're not sitting behind a desk. They're out doing something. You know, they're building something. These are realistic occupations. So if you know that about yourself, you want to find a career that falls into these categories. Now, like I said, you'll get 3 codes. So for instance, when I took it, I'm normally like social, investigative, artistic. So typically your codes will be adjacent. They'll be next to each other. Social people typically are not realistic. Those don't tend to go together. So this what is it? 6-sided, what's that, a hexagon? Might have said that wrong. But this model is laid out specifically with the idea that those that are least alike are across from one another in the diagram. So that's what you're getting when you get your code. So let me stop my share. We're going to go back here to the website. Oopsie, right here. Okay. I'm going to share my code again. Share my screen, excuse me. All right. So after you have taken your inventory, you'll have results here on the side. And if you and out for a second here, I'll just enter my scores manually just so you can get an idea. So I'm I don't know, let's say like 20. I'm just gonna guess here. 15 and 10. And male. Okay. Oh, 0 to 30. Oops. Let's try that again. All right. See, it's not letting me do that. Come on. Oh. 5, 6, 0. Okay. Let's try that again now. All right. So just to give you an idea, I went and manually entered my scores. Yours should then generate as a result of the interest inventory you took. So now you have combined scores, and you'll have gender-specific scores. Let me explain that. So as we talked about with your ASVAB-CEP scores, men and women have different experiences, and so they're exposed to different things. Our culture does the same way with social norms. I'm a social guy. I like musicals. I cry at movies. That's not pretty typical for most men. And so where I have a social score of 77, specifically for male, that score is pretty high. Doesn't mean that I'm less social than other women or more social. I'm just compared to other men, I'm a little more social. And that's important with especially like your enterprising realistic careers. You can tend to see men score higher than that because they just have more, they're given more opportunities to experience those situations. And if you want to delve more into each of these codes, you can click on Learn More. Now, once we have our codes, now here's the cool thing. So we've got our codes and we should have our sample strengths up here. Now we can match those to find careers. So we're going to go here into OccuFind. So if you click on Step 2 OccuFind, it's going to take you to a database that pulls from different federal websites and different national databases. And what you'll be able to do from here is you can search by your codes, you can search by your strengths, or both. So I'm going to look at social careers, and I'm going to look at social careers that require verbal strength. And I'm going to explore. I want to see those careers that need me to be social, and let's say I'm strong in verbal, so I want careers that fit with that. And so it's going to give me careers in alphabetical order that fit both my personality and my skill ability. And see how these are color coded over here, and it shows you the color coding matches the codes here. And then if I were to click on, let's say, acute care nurses, not only is it going to show me, of course, it matches my interest codes, but it shows you the importance of the skills I need. So this one I picked, you have to be good at verbal and math. Let's go back for a second and let's pick actor. I suspect actor's not going to be the same. Yeah, I was right. Actor, you have to be strong in verbal, but don't have to be a lot of math skills, science technical skills. So once I know what my interest results are, and I have my ASVAB scores, I can look and see, all right, I don't want to do anything involved in math, but I'm really good at, I'm really interested in artistic careers, and I can find that, and then I can drill down deeper. I can look at how to get there. So tell me, what kind of education do I need? Specifically, what kind of licenses or credentials? What the employment statistics are. Now, we don't really have entry-level employment statistics for actors. So let me go back and pick something that's a better example. So we're going to pick anesthesiologists. That looks interesting. So obviously that takes high math and technical skills. You need a doctoral training or postdoctoral training, you need MD. Now from here, this part's pretty cool. So this shows me from here, I can see what kind of licenses I'll need, what kind of certifications I'll need. If there's an apprenticeship program related, now with an anesthesiologist, it's not really typical, but if, let's say we're looking at a skilled trade, I could see what apprenticeship programs would get me to that career. And I can also see how I could pursue that career in the military. Because remember, most of the careers within the military, most military specialties mirror a civilian career. To the point that if you know anyone who's been in the military, when they're getting ready to get out, be discharged, they finish their hitch or whatever, they're retiring, the military will help them find a related civilian career. And often the training you receive in the military will prepare you for civilian careers. So you can look specifically at military information if you want. You can, of course, you can look at employment statistics, and you can, from there, you can look at average salaries. We'll look, for instance, for a second here at military information. Let's say you specifically wanted to go in the military. It gives you information. You have to be an officer. And these are the branches, the services that offer this specific occupation. If you also wanted to look more into information for military careers, when you look at your scores and you look for military careers, you can drill down farther and it'll actually show you those sub scores we talked about earlier. When you want to explore an actual military career, those actual sub scores come into play specifically. You can see the combination of sub scores needed for that military career. There's also a separate website you can access directly from this website. I'll go ahead and type it in for you. It's called Careers in the Military. And that is a related career, a related website, I'm sorry. And you can actually create an account using the same login information used for your ASVAB program website. So you can dig down in specifically military careers. Let me back up 1 second here. Back to this right here. Okay. So I want to just highlight a few more things when we're done here. Under step 3, there's a couple resources you can look at. There's a portfolio and a coursework planner. These really mirror what we do in Naviance, so I would suggest you'd probably be better served to use Naviance for these things. You could do your part of your research within this ASVAB program website, and then you could take that information back to Naviance, and you could find the careers. They're going to be very similar in how they're laid out within Naviance because they're pulling from a similar database. You can save those careers and do research within Naviance. I would suggest that. You could do it within ASVAB program, but since we use Naviance for more things and we'll do more training within that within school, I would suggest Naviance. Same with my education and career plans. You can actually create a portfolio and just put in goals you have for yourself. You can also retake the FYI. You can take that more than once if you didn't feel like those results were consistent with what you think they should be. And I want to show you one more thing, guys, and then open it up to questions before we're done. There is the ASVAB program actually has a YouTube channel as well. So hopefully you're seeing that now. I toggled over there. ASVAB has a YouTube channel that has information specifically on exploring the Occupying, taking the FYI, and then also a detailed summary of what I went through and how to understand your scores. So you're welcome to take a look at those, and when I post this recording on Canvas, I'll also post these links as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up, guys. Do you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask before I finish up here? I don't want to hurry anybody out. Appreciate your time. Go ahead and message me if you have any questions, and I'll try to answer those. It might be something everybody has. Okay, I don't hear everything, so I will take your silence that you don't have questions. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I will be, just so you know, I'll be starting scheduling hopefully next week. And so if you have specific questions about this and how it relates to you know, your careers and especially the classes you want to take. I'm happy to discuss it with you. We'll kind of go from there. So guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll see everybody tomorrow.